I'm going to go with kind of disruptors. We all know Uber Eats. It came about, it brings you food from the restaurant you want to go to that you should be visiting, but you don't want to. There is a company in Europe called Deliveroo, which started around the same time as Uber Eats, and they pioneered dark kitchens. So dark kitchens would be a restaurant without any real footprint. There's no customers visiting. They even have shipping containers that are converted into kitchens. So right now, Uber Eats is in the process of bidding on purchasing this company. So if they do this in Europe, are they going to bring it here? What's going on with this industry, and what can we expect? So I'm going to lead off with Rafael, if you have any opinion on this and what you see happening.
I mean, in general, the way that Uber Eats works is that they go out and Uber will recruit these restaurants and they will get them to sign up, and then they will charge the restaurant and they charge the consumer for the service. It's used more and more because people don't want to leave their house, but at the same time, the trends that we see in retail are that people actually do want to leave their house more and more. Georgie will get into it more than I can, but the amount that Uber Eats actually charges the restaurant forces the restaurant to make any kind of a profit, to lower food costs, to eliminate the quality of their staff. And a lot of food just plain doesn't travel well. Not everything travels as well as Pizza Hut. And anyone that's actually used the service can kind of tell where it's going. As far as a dark kitchen, there's plenty of lit kitchens. There's restaurants that are out there that are paying full rent. And there's plenty of restaurants that are heavy on Uber Eats, and you see that the ones that are most prevalent there are McDonald's, fast food concept, that their food cost is extremely low. Because when you're a quality restaurant and your margin's 15%, you can't afford to pay 30% on Uber Eats. So you got to get rid of staff, you got to get rid of food, you got to get rid of all kinds of stuff to support that. So if you see that something is widely marketed on Uber Eats, you probably shouldn't be eating it anyway.
And I actually agree. We see, as far as people doing what I'm doing, as far as everyone I speak to, other chefs or restaurateurs, we almost see Uber Eats as the death of restaurants. We don't operate on 30% profit margins. It's impossible. If you're running perfectly, we're running 12, 15% profit margin. So every time you guys come in and buy something, if I'm losing 30%, how long do I have to survive? And it's really impossible. So the trend's heading that way, I get it. Stories say people order twice as much food when you do Uber Eats, so it makes up for it. Uber's a great way of promoting your company. Promoting your business shouldn't cost you 30%, so find another source of promoting it. Dark kitchens, I think, is a good idea. What we do every once in a while, we play with it a little bit. We're not open for lunch, so while we're doing prep, we'll go ahead and we'll do like a little test kitchen through Uber Eats. And while my guys and myself are prepping, we'll go ahead and do Uber Eats deliveries, which is sort of similar to what you're talking about. And that helps us in that manner, as far as just a little bit extra revenue while we're not really working, but it's dead time for us, so we're not paying employees, we're not making any money, so it's just an extra kind of income for us. And yeah, I mean, Uber Eats is one of those things that really, really, really scares us, and not for us so much, but for people trying to make it and try to hustle and working really hard and not understanding your price points and your profit margins, so yeah. Diego?
Yes, well, we've got to put things in perspective in this industry. The industry, restaurant industry, is about $800 billion, with about 1 million locations that serve food, of which about 48% is standard type restaurant, 43% is fast food restaurant, and the fastest growing category within that scope of $800 billion is what is called fast casual. So it's in between a regular restaurant and a fast food restaurant. So they prepare the food to order, and it's all fresh and so forth. And they are working extremely well with the Uber Eats concept, with the Grub and several others. And one of the things that we expect is that Amazon is going to get into these food service business. They bought Whole Food. They're going to be delivering food to the consumers from the Whole Food areas. And we believe that they're going to be a disruptor competing with Uber Eats. So yes, it takes away a profit from the restaurant, but the way the fast casual restaurants, such as my client, Miami Grill, sees it is added revenue. We started with the takeout being about 20% of the business. Today, our average is 50% of the business is takeout, Uber Eats, and drive-through window. So it changes the whole dynamics of how a restaurant is set up, especially in the fast food and the fast casual area, where we can reduce the footprint of the restaurant from a 3,500 now to a 3,000 to a 2,500 square feet to allow for the less number of people coming into the restaurant to eat there. So yes, we have to pay a premium for Uber Eats to take the food to the consumer, but we reduce our overhead by reducing the size of the store and so forth, and the overhead in the store. So there is a compensating balance as to this disruption, and it's here to stay. People are ordering, people are using it, and whether we like it or not, that's one of those things that is happening, like Amazon. Retailers like Macy's might not like Amazon, but consumers do, and we got to serve the consumer.
I want to hear from Rod as well, but question for you mentioned about downsizing. What about secondary windows specifically for Uber Eats pickups? Are you seeing more of those being drawn into plans?
Yes, so one of the things that we are planning in our restaurant is also pickup windows. So not only a drive-through, but a pickup window and applications on your phone and so forth. So you don't have to even go through the drive-through. You order on your phone through the app, and by the time you get there, the food is ready, and they bring it to a segment of the parking area where you pull in, and they bring the food to you there. So there's all kinds of different delivery methodology that the fast food and fast casual restaurants are using to accommodate consumers that don't want to come to the restaurant for that particular meal.
Great. Rod?
So as a developer, we want anything that can enhance the health of the retailer or the restaurant, to help make it work and make a more successful business that can do more sales and obviously pay more rent, work in your shopping center. The problem that we find is that, now we have more of these tenants, more asking for drive-through, drop-off windows, Uber Eats spaces. The first time I had asked for Uber Eats spaces before, and it's difficult with the cost of land and development to justify that in the design and development of a shopping center. And we much look at the restaurants now as an anchor in our shopping centers. So whereas before we probably had 10-15% mix in most of our shopping centers for restaurants, now it's trending towards 25% mix in the shopping centers. So we want people to come in, go to the restaurants, walk around, experience the shopping center, make the shopping center a more inviting place for people to come and stay, rather than having delivery vehicles coming in and out of the shopping centers. There is a business in Brazil, for instance, I heard, called Direct, that has a tenant that actually rents some spaces in each of the shopping centers, some parking spaces, for delivery to the consumer, and they actually pool all the businesses in that shopping center and do deliveries for that shopping center. So that might be a better model going forward, to have one tenant that is the disruptor that actually pays rent, but also services these other tenants as far as delivery goes, and pick-up drop-off. Because pick-up drop-off, lockers, and deliveries is becoming a bigger part of how we look at design in retail and in multifamily going forward.
Rod, I'm going to stay with you and ask, what are you seeing as bigger box retail locations are moving out? Who's replacing them? Who's coming to the market? Do we have any new disruptors? We had the medical facilities that are taking up retail space to service neighborhoods. What are you seeing now? What do you forecast coming in the future?
Yeah, so there was an ICSC chairman who once said, we're not over-retailed, we're under-demolished. and the point is that we've got a lot of big boxes that are coming around that are obsolete, and retailers and anchors that are obsolete. So in many shopping centers, we're looking at zoning changes where we can put multifamily in big boxes, where we can put medical, universities, co-working centers. The co-working centers take a 40,000 to 60,000 foot box. They're a perfect replacement for some of these big boxes that have gone out. So our centers are becoming more mixed use. That's one big change from the disruptors that we're seeing happening. The other thing is a lot of anchors are going smaller. So they're changing their footprint. So whereas a Best Buy was 45, 55,000 feet, it doesn't need that anymore, maybe a 20, 25,000 foot. Where the supermarkets were bigger, they're going smaller. Where Walmart was doing 120 to 200,000 foot stores, they're doing these 40,000 foot groceries now with great pickup areas, with delivery areas, which are basically the last mile and their distribution centers. We just built a shopping center in Naranja, and we dedicated for Walmart about 7 spaces for customer pickup and drop-off, and a drive-up, drop-off window, and they have computer terminals there right at the entrance to the store, because that's how they're competing with Amazon and becoming a click and collect type of retailer. So those are some of the things we're seeing with some of the big boxes going forward. I think, you know, there's plenty of big boxes that are still looking to expand, doing well. And, you know, the TJs, the Ross are very, very active and very successful here in South Florida.
Just to expand on that, if you do a change of use and you put in a co-working or something different, are you expecting then a turnover in all the other spaces to a different tenant mix? So you may succeed in getting a new tenant in there and occupying that, but then your co-tenants are going to want to vacate and you have to put new ones in. So a lot of work behind that?
A lot of work behind that. And a lot of the problems with retail leases are co-tenancy clauses where you can, you know, go to percentage rent or half rent when you don't have your anchor. So it's something we've got to deal with going forward. But I mean, certain types of replacement anchors like medical and like co-working really do drive sales, I believe, to the restaurants if they're positioned right.
Correct.
I don't know what the restaurant guys think.
The big anchors that are going away though are enclosed mall anchors. I mean, you see Sears, J.C. Penney's in big time trouble, those kind of guys. But I mean, the local grocer anchors, the guys that occupy 95% of all retail space, like TJ Maxx and all these things, are very, very stable. So in terms of co-tenancy clauses and things like that, we see it a lot in enclosed malls when a Sears box goes away, but those are being replaced. You know, if you look at the examples of when boxes have gone away, like Sports Authority disappeared all over South Florida. Every South Florida store, I think with the exception of one in Palm Beach, was profitable here, but they just closed nationwide. So we take for granted that we're in South Florida and our retail is amazingly resilient as it relates to the rest of the country. We don't have any idea what Middle America malls look like out this way until we get into Central and North Florida, West Florida. It's a whole different ballgame, but our malls here are completely different. For example, the Sports Authorities were backfilled almost immediately by Dick's Sporting Goods. Then there's the Circuit Cities were backfilled, and many times by TJ Maxx's and Ross's. We've got box deals that are getting done throughout everywhere, primarily in the retail corridors that have been traditionally successful. So you look at Kendall Drive, Sunset, Coral Way, Flagler, even 8th Street, those corridors remain very, very strong, while some of the ancillary stuff kind of struggles a little bit more, and that's the stuff that tends to get demolished. But the better mall owners, the better developers like us, like Portellus, you have to stay ahead of that. For example, even across from us at downtown Dadeline Mall, Simon Property Group, Dadeline Mall is one of the top 5 malls in the country for Simon, and they're taking the time and spending the money to bring out the Apple Store to the front. They're adding a hotel over by the Saks. They're doing a lot of things to stay ahead of the curve, because just because you're one of the top 5 malls in the country doesn't mean that the top 5 malls can still be broke if you fall asleep at the wheel.
Diego, or George?
Yeah, I believe that there is a repositioning of the shopping center concept. There is still a component of entertainment. People want to go out. People want to have experience. And the mall owners have to create that experience, that excitement. Like the Mall of the Americas and the new mall that is coming here to Florida, 6 million square feet on their air conditioning. You will say, well, if the retail age is over, why are they building 6 million square feet? Well, it's a whole new concept. It's more entertainment. It's more experience driven for the consumer. And I think that's where we're going with retail today. So.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I mean, I see real estate obviously in my own eyes. We see real estate and commercial real estate changing to what downtown Dadeline is, you know, apartments up top, retail on the bottom. And us, as far as chef-driven restaurants, now being the anchors of the neighborhood. We work hand in hand with all our developers, with Ralph, with Dadeline Mall, with Geraldo, with Plantation, with Beach Place that we're going into. And we sit there and we say, what is going to bring people into this neighborhood? What chef friends can I come in and bring in with me? What bar can we bring in here? What retail space is going to do well and work with us? Because Dayton Mall is downtown Dayton is a perfect example. It was vacant for how long? 15 years?
It's all about
It
the
went into
experience.
receivership and had every kind of failure before we
Exactly,
got in.
until we came in, then we really worked hard and changed the neighborhood for hopefully forever. So as far as I see, and as far as we see it, those big box retailers are a little bit thing of the past, and we're the future, not more. Again, and we're not talking about 10,000 square foot Chili's, we're talking about more 3,000, 2,000 square foot chef-driven restaurants, and people who really care about their product and your experience and want to make sure we're the best possible. So you continue coming to us, and then you go to our neighbor next door, you go to other restaurant next door, and we become a community, we help each other out, and we really see foot traffic going up and down the neighborhood, not just to my restaurant, but to Pub Buddy, to Harry's, to Guy. And so that's where we see, as far as just commercial real estate in general, moving towards. And again, away from the big box
I think this is one of the great real estate opportunities of our time. We're in a group of real estate people here. When you've got big boxes paying, $3, $5, $7 a square foot flat for years and years, and those spaces come on the market and can be repurposed at tremendous uptick in valuation.
Yeah, no, you guys definitely rip us off.
Yeah.
I heard $3,
I don't know what he's talking about.
I don't know what he's talking about.
It's all about the consumer experience coming to the centers.
You guys are worse than Uber.
Speaking of consumer experience, right now we have a new tenant coming into market for medical marijuana. So as we have in the past, we've had XXX video places that have been tenants, and they usually pay rent and a half or things of that sort of being a plaza, because you have to deal with the neighboring tenants and not wanting to pay as much because they don't want to be next to them. From your perspective as a restaurateur, who do you look for to be next to, from people that are representing properties?
I mean, I'm sure my dream and his dream with Miami Grills is as many dispensaries as possible so they come and eat. But I want them to drink and make the money off the alcohol, so don't smoke too much. You know what? We like a good balance. I like being next to the best. So in downtown Dayton, we went out and we got 4 James Beard nominated chefs to come up next to us. Neighborhood needs a bar. I feel, especially the category I'm in, contemporary American food, is being overplayed a little bit. I think finding restaurants are specific, like an Italian place, an Asian place, and get away from more of the whole contemporary American just genre of everything encumbered into one, is where the trends are going towards. One day I might want to eat Chinese or Asian, so let's go to downtown Dayton. There's an Asian restaurant there. Maybe my wife or my girlfriend or a friend, you know what, I'm not feeling like Chinese, I want to go eat pizza. Well, I guess we have a pizza place next door too, so just know your options, what you guys like. We try to stay true to ourselves and ask ourselves, what do we like? What would I want? And be honest with yourselves and surround the neighborhood by that. We see it's hard for retails to come into where we're at because our rents are high. Saying that, gyms now, we have like 2 or 3 gyms coming in, maybe a hair salon. I would love to see more like art studios and stuff like that, as far as we could work with everybody. But just a good like blend of different cultures and ideas coming together is it's what Miami is, and it's what works best as far as we're concerned.
Before we move on from you, food halls, what's your opinion on those?
They make no sense to me, as honest as I could be. We've been asked to be in food halls. I think it's a trend. I don't think I've ever seen a really food hall, especially in Miami, do well. I think it's hard for the restaurateurs in there as far as trying to make a profit off of it. It's a great way to get your name out there as a chef. As your first opportunity, almost like doing a pop-up. But making a living doing a small little food hall as far as the individual restaurants, it's going to be interesting to see how long they can actually stay with the same restaurants, or if they treat it more like just pop-up restaurants and just like every 6 months switch everybody out. Maybe something like that will work. But as far as the way I see things going now, it's hard. I mean, food prices are extremely high nowadays, especially if we want to do things the right way. We go out, we source from the best farms, from the best ranches, which is why the 30% for Uber Eats really, really affects us, because our profit margin, especially on our food, is so tiny. We always say the food pays the bills and we make money off the liquor, and that's true. So it's food halls. I mean, him and I've had this discussion a bunch of times. To me, it's more of a wait and see. Again, it's more of a, if you keep it rotating and it's up and coming chefs, I think it's an amazing thing. As far as restaurateurs like me, unless I want to do like a new concept or something like that, I want to practice it out. But again, it would be a short-term thing. It wouldn't be a long-term.
Food halls are essentially really fancy food courts.
Yeah.
And a food court works because you've got central ownership, the mall owns a food court, the tenants are tenants.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different in the modern food hall concept, and the problem with it is that you've got so much common area to make a place like Central work, and to me there's no way that Central and Brickell City Center is working, especially in the face of Casa Tua, who's actually doing very, very well. They put 2 Italian food halls in the same mall, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But a food court is the perfect place to pitch the Uber Eats bit to. And the reason why is because if you look at food courts, for the most part, you're going to see a lot of repeats. You're going to see Charlie's, you're going to see the Kelly's Cajun, you're going to see Subway, you're going to see the Mediterranean guy. And the reason why those guys would work in Uber Eats is because their margins are very, very high, because their rents are also 30%, their food costs tend to be in the single digits, as opposed to Georgie, who's paying 28 to 32% food costs. The Kelly's Cajun guy, that chicken you're eating in the food costs, that costs him 10 cents on the dollar. And that's why you probably shouldn't be eating that stuff, but that's what works. But that's what works in a food court. And honestly, if you look at new concepts, have you ever been to a food court and you think, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in a food court, and then when you go back you think, that was the coolest thing I ever saw in a food court, and they're gone.
And look, we love Simon across the street from us. We're dying to be part of Data and Mall, and we've sat with them how many times? And I'm like, let's do it. But then when it's time to sign that lease,
It's a bear. It's a bear, man. It's a bear
that's
of a
no
lease.
joke, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. That's what we're trying to say is the food costs for them have to be extremely low.
I worked at Simon. I know what the margins are. I know what the rents are. In a food court, rents aren't even quoted per square foot, because the rents are so high. You get a 600 square foot space and I'll quote you $150,000 a year, because if you work that out to a per square foot rate, it's outrageous. To pay those kind of rents, you just have, something's got to give. So they give on staff, they give on food, they give on everything to make up the offset for the rents.
What makes a food hall work best is a very unique operator and theme and concept. I mean, food hall is not a new concept. If you remember, Bayside opened up with a huge food hall, and it kind of flopped after a while because it didn't have legs, it didn't have a great theme and operator concept. If you look at something like Italy, you know, in New York and Chicago, and out of Italy, which all the different Italian themes to it, and then the brew pub, the gastropub in it, and the wine bar, and the cooking school, that's more exciting for a developer.
Let me ask you this. Do you think Italy is more a tourist thing just because of more appetite? Do you think the locals in Chicago and New York actually go to Italy? And then do we have a market like that as far as tourism market to support something like that?
I think there's few markets that can support it. I mean, Miami is reaching that point that it can. If you look at St. Roch's Market in Louisiana is different than St. Roch Market here.
Yeah.
St. Roch's Market in New Orleans is insanely cool because they're bringing in those local flavor, New Orleans style eateries and chefs that are up and coming, and they're doing something different and interesting. If we had a great Latin food hall here, I mean, that would make a difference if it was done right and managed right and populated right.
I agree with you 100% that Miami can support a food hall, but can it support a food hall on Lincoln Road, 2 food halls in Brickell, a food hall here, a food hall there? Does it?
A vegan food hall.
A food hall will work.
Like anything,
15.
it gets overdone pretty quickly. You know.
Well, the one in Wynwood,
100 Lucky's.
100 Lucky's is great, but it's also small. I wouldn't know if I'd consider it a real big food hall, but if you keep it nice and tight and compact and have a bar to it and entertainment, that could work.
Again, it's all about the experience that the consumer is going to have there. It's not so much, you know, having 10 vendors just putting any kind of food. It's an experience.
And it's going to have a theme, a certain
It's
theme.
a theme,
Just like
exactly. That's what it's all about. And if you create that theme and you create that experience for the consumer, they will come.
Absolutely.
And they also maximize the use of their outside seating, so it's the inverse of a food hall. So a food hall has all this common area stuff that they're paying rent on.
And again, at the end of the day, in reality, it's what kind of product you're putting out. We've historically gone into the worst possible restaurant spots and locations in the history.
Right.
But we were confident, listen, we're going to do good enough and we're going to change it around and we'll do well. And we've been lucky and blessed enough that I have been able to work that hard and get people to come through our doors. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with our old location, which was a block west of us, but we're in between two apartments in Metropolis Towers, 0 parking, 0 signage.
Building was condemned.
Building was condemned for a little bit. And we did great. I mean, we opened the doors not knowing what's going to happen. We had 2-hour waits for the first year.
No, it's an amazing,
Yeah, it's crazy.
amazing
So
experience.
it's one of those things that we always, like I always say, food halls won't work, but again, if you do things right, you bring the right people in, it should work.
Yep.
Oh, to get back to your question on medical marijuana, so we never really kind of closed that. But one of the concerns we have as a landlord is what our anchor tenants think. And more of the supermarket leases and the big anchor tenant leases are prohibiting vape shops, and they're prohibiting, all these uses that are coming around. So just to kind of fill in that blank, I mean, it's something that we don't really, theoretically have a problem with, and maybe in an unanchored strip center it works great. But in a supermarket anchored center, we really can't look at those uses because it'll foreclose us from getting Publix.
Well, I'm assuming also, like, anything that's more family friendly, you don't want it. I mean, I was joking earlier about one next to me, but I'd probably be a little bit suspicious and tentative of opening up a restaurant right next door to one because who's going in there? As somebody like, those would be my concerns about something like that.
Yeah, I think that the perception in terms of just a national REIT, those guys are the ones that are most allergic, I think, to a dispensary, because essentially if it's not legal in all 50 states, it's not financeable. When you look at it from the eyes of like a principal or somebody like that, that's a major landlord, Kimco, those guys won't touch dispensaries. No. But I mean, it puts you in a position where you really have to look at what you're talking about. A guy like Greenleaf or GTI that we just did a deal with in Kendall, it's a much different operation than what you might have in your mind, where you might think that it's just an empty space and you got some dude with a plastic table in the middle with a bunch of weed.
Yeah, like it's Colorado or something like that. And those were obviously our concerns. So I'd say, and so it's a more normalized thing. We see the patterns and how people react. Would be when I'd say we'd be comfortable going in next to one or not.
Well, then you have the legal issue. Can you collect rent and deposit that rent into a bank account when that usage is not approved by the banking or the federal government? So that becomes another challenging situation for a shopping center.
I'll chime in on that one, actually. From our perspective, one of the properties we have in Hollywood, we have a smoke shop, I guess you can call it, in there, and then opening up this weekend is the doctor's office for giving you the license in order to do it, Greenleaf. We're actually in the process of negotiating with a dispensary, but I'm all for it. My brother is an attorney, and he's hesitant too because he's concerned with the federal laws around banking.
You're going to be a one-stop shop.
We're going to be a one-stop shop. Come visit.
Price, be careful. They can take everything from you. The banks can remove the mortgage from you. It's a tough cookie.
Which is the issue. We're trying to do short-term lease. Do you have kick-out clauses? Nobody knows where this market is going. We're not in Canada, which just legalized recreational. So it's those concerns that we're learning as we go, and those clauses in your leases are going to be what's important. If you are a tenant rep, you're going to want to represent your tenant, and you don't want them in there. But if you're the landlord rep, make sure you're covered, and those are there to protect them. Because if you're not financeable, or if you can't deposit that money, what do? The company suggested, we have another company in Canada, we'll issue the checks from there. Look, that looks a little bit more like fraud. That makes me even more concerned, and then I can have federal crime issues. So it's one of those things we're still dealing with.
And that's a big challenge in the real estate. Even agents like us, can you get a commission from a dispensary when you're going to deposit that money through your broker record in your company, and then they're going to put it into the bank? Is that a legal transaction? Well, it depends who you talk to. Right. And in Canada, it's legal because it's at the federal level. It's not just at the local level. That's our problem here. Yes, Colorado is terrific. You can buy it anywhere. But what do you do with that money? Well, they have oodles of cash sitting around that they can't take to banks. So now you create a whole cash economy in the process.
You open up a restaurant.
But at the same time, this isn't Breaking Bad and nobody's figuring this out for the first time. There are dispensaries out there. Sorterra is open, GTI is open. There are concepts that are out there that are doing it and are doing it right, and the landlords are getting paid and everything is fine. So it's not like we're talking about the very first dispensary that's going to be rolled out in the South Florida, and maybe the feds are going to come in and choppers. It's just not going to happen. And the fact is, we live in South Florida, and if the feds were going to show up and shut us down because somebody was doing something illegal with the money before they paid us,
What happened a while ago?
it would be gone. Retail would be dead then. Because in South Florida, there's a lot of crooked stuff that goes on. There's entire operations that I know for a fact are selling sushi, but there's
You suspect it. You suspect it.
yeah, we suspect, highly suspect, because they've told us.
Speaking of what can come in the future, 2 years from now, what do you see happening? Right now, our vacancy rate on retail and industrial is about 2%. You know, the market is strong. I know when we were speaking before, George, you were saying it's difficult to find second-generation restaurants.
Well, it has been in the past. Even though I say restaurants should be your anchors, the overabundance of restaurants being open in the last 5 years has been absolutely ridiculous, and it's been done by people who just want to open up a restaurant, not really know what's going on. For years, we were looking for second-gen restaurants, and we couldn't find one. Now we get offered one every day. And we see it. We see that trend coming back to normalize a little bit, just from our employees. My biggest fear has always been expanding because of kitchen staff. And over the last 3 months, I probably have one of the best kitchen staffs in Miami now. Why? Because it's getting a little bit back down to normal. Nobody's opening up restaurants every 2 weeks. There's a really big problem in Miami as far as restaurants, staffing. There's only so many of us to go around to work a kitchen, to run in front of the house. So we're seeing a normalization. Like I was joking about earlier, rents are not too bad. CAMs are getting absolutely ridiculous. And are forcing a lot of us to close because we can't continue paying the high insurances, the high taxes, while paying our chefs $70,000, $80,000 a year, while paying our managers $70,000 a year. So we're looking forward, even though I would never want anybody to close or lose anything, because I know a lot of people work really hard. We're looking forward to be normalizing again and not be a new restaurant every week and just an over-influx of restaurateurs and restaurants.
I mean, landlords went out there and bought into the idea that restaurants are your anchors, and the problem is that most people didn't pay attention to that good restaurants can be your anchors.
Exactly, and it's the good restaurants that are going to survive, people doing it right, which is why Dayland Mall is doing, downtown Dayland's doing well, because we went in there, and I personally selected, together with the landlord, together with Ralph, chefs and restaurants that we know are doing things the right way. Like just somebody from South America that has $5 million to open up a restaurant today. So it's important when you guys are selecting your restaurant, like do your research. Find somebody like me. Let's go talk to the restaurateur. Let's go talk to the chef. Let's see what they're doing. Let's go look at their kitchens at the other restaurant. Let's make sure they can come into our neighborhood. Make sure they give a positive imprint in our neighborhood. And like I said, help grow the neighborhood and make you guys money in the future. And I mean, sheesh.
If you're looking to fill space, the phone's going to ring.
Yeah.
If you're looking to lease space, the phone's going to ring, and you're going to find someone that wants to open a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's not hard. If you want to create something that's going to actually mean something that's going to last, it takes time. And you got to go out and find it. You got to go out and get it.
I mean, do you want to give out TI for the same space every other year? No, so take your time. Find the right group of people to come in and do things the right way. And that's always my biggest suggestion as far as when I talk to everybody. Because everybody wants to do, I know I'm harping on fast casual, but there's fast casuals that work and there's fast casuals that don't work. The ones who I see work in Miami are the ones who are generated in Miami. Like your guys, like Pincho Factory. The ones that we see struggling are the ones that do great in the Midwest. And they come in here and they're like, what's going on? What's going on is a different world.
They don't fit.
They don't fit. So be careful as far as a fast casual bringing into your neighborhood. And again, treat them like a real restaurant. Make sure they're doing things properly. And then you should be fine. But it's all about the research you guys put into your tenants. More than just saying, okay, you have the financials, let's go ahead and let's do this.
No, you have to have the right concept.
Yeah.
You have to have the right product. and the right people managing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Miami Grill has been around since 35 years ago
Yeah.
as an ongoing restaurant. So you got a legacy. You know that they know what they're doing.
Yeah. And they're Miami, and I'm really happy they're making a comeback because I used to love it, and when they started disappearing, it was a very sad thing. So things like that, I think is what we should be pushing in South Florida.
I think you're going to see a lot of new concepts come into South Florida.
Yeah.
This has always been a very, very healthy retail market. It's got all the drivers, the density of population, the tourism. It really is not overbuilt, although sometimes it seems like it, just on a per capita basis of retail space. And you've now got these e-commerce retailers who are starting to open up stores between the Amazons, the Bonobos, Suit Supply, Warby Parker. All these e-commerce tenants have found that their sales go up when they have a presence in the market. So they're opening up brick and mortar stores. Now, granted, they're doing this in the best locations, and they're really being very selective. But the best locations in Miami are still going to go at a premium, and there's going to be a backfill by new retail concepts coming in. And then the other boxes that we see are filled with these different alternative uses, especially fitness. Fitness tenants are very, very active now, a bunch of different concepts. Yeah. Not only fitness, but then the entertainment, the trampoline parks, the kids' entertainment centers. There's just a lot going on in development of new concepts right now that are going to fill up spaces.
Yeah, and I can tell you, every chef friend of mine that I know, we're all working on fast casual concepts. Yeah. We're opening up a bar next to a bar now called Ave Maria, and our kitchen's actually going to be an incubator for fast casual concepts. So we're going to, every 6 months, we're going to switch it up. We're going to see what works, what doesn't. And I'm not the only one. So there's going to be, I see it, again, everything in the future is fast casual, maybe, maybe not. I enjoy the sit-down restaurant. But as far as a business plan for myself, not having to be in such a tough kitchen every day of my life, we do see the fast casual as a way for us to go ahead and spread our food in a good way without the labor intensity that we have now on a continuing basis.
Right, and that's the big challenge with a regular restaurant. You have a very heavy labor cost in addition to the cost of food. Yeah. And when you have 14 million people working in an industry that most of them are at the base level salary, and we look at base level salary increasing to $15, what is that going to do to your cost? So you got to reduce your labor force, and fast casual is a way to reduce labor costs because you don't have your waiters and your overhead that you have in a regular restaurant.
Well, let me ask you this question. So you're talking about minimum wage going up to 15 with the possibility. I've always seen fast casual. Let's see how I say this. My concerns of fast casual restaurants, as far as a business person, as a restaurateur, is not having the beer and wine sales, not having the appetizer sell, not having the dessert sell. So we always see, and the concepts we're working on, and again, we pay, fortunately, we're able to pay our staff very well, so we're above the $15 an hour range. But that's always our concern with the fast casuals. So coming up a way where people can order through apps, like you said.
Right. Everything.
So you don't have to wait in line. You sit at a table and you have a little tablet, like Tacoology does. Have a little tablet.
Right.
Boom, boom. I want a beer. I want an appetizer.
Correct.
I want a glass of wine. I want this while you're sitting down. So now you're increasing your sales by 200%. So just going up, getting a cheeseburger and a Coke and a fries and going home. Right. You can sit down and get 2 or 3 beers.
And that's what Miami Grill has done. They have included beer, wine, desserts, baked cookies, baked stuff in the restaurant. Yeah. So now you're adding value.
Yeah, you want to hit every tier and make as much. You don't want people to go home with any money in their pockets. You want to take it off.
Our ticket has gone from an $8, $10 to a $15, $20. Yeah. Why? Because
you have a full experience now.
Exactly, it's a full experience. You save 18% on tipping, okay, and you don't have to wait for a waiter to come and take your food.
Well, the way I think I would do it, if we were to do something like that, would be almost, Tacoology does it. Tacoology charges the 18%, so we'd be saving labor costs because we'd be treating the servers as servers.
But they still have a server that comes and shows you the tablet.
Yeah, but then you don't have to pay that server minimum wage. You pay them the server minimum wage at 5%, $5.05.
This is what Uber Eats has done to you got to analyze all this out.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take away, but we only have a few minutes left. I would love to open up some questions if anyone has.
This message is going to be for Rodham and perhaps Raphael as well. We don't have a lender on the panel, but with all of the nationals historically being favored by lending institutions when you're building and developing these shopping centers, how are they reacting to the locals like Barley who don't have the national credit? Are the lenders loosening up their reins? What's happening on that end?
Well,
What are you saying?
I can answer that question real quick if you wish, because it just happened to us 2 days ago. Just so happens the same. Can I speak freely?
Don't know.
Yeah.
No, don't speak freely, no. Just kidding.
Throw somebody on the bus. The same lender who financed the original of downtown Dayland is in works of financing the other project we're going into. And the second they found out we're going to be part of it, together with Ralph, they were more than extremely happy. So the names are getting out there. The lenders know. The lenders, they don't have the money for being dumb. They're doing their research. They know what the market trends are. So as far as our experiences, I think lenders are happy to see me come in. If I be honest with you now, he can speak.
I think, the lenders are cognizant that the business is changing and we're getting less chain and more local flavor. They want to see that the restaurant has skin in the game. They want to see the restaurateurs investing in the space. They want to see a good financial backer behind the restaurant, guarantees. So just like they're looking at the underwriting of the actual developer, they're really looking at the underwriting of each of these individual tenants. So you're not able to pop a bunch of, just creative concepts without anything behind them. And I think that's where, I don't think they've relaxed the standards in any way. I think they've opened their mind to a different type of guarantee, because the lenders are always going to make sure that they're protected.
And
more
speaking
so
on the
than ever.
guarantees, I can tell you my perspective, we don't do personal guarantees anymore.
So,
But you've got a
sometimes you
corporate
get letters of
guarantee that
credits.
holds a bunch of restaurants,
Yeah,
so
but
you're still
and our
secured.
leases we're doing with what Ralph terms as a good guy guarantee that like in 6 months if we're not working on, we're going to turn. So it's not a true hardcore
completion guarantee and an open
So
guarantee.
those that's where we're moving towards, because we understand the lender's taking a risk, they're taking a risk, but we're taking a risk as well. So they can't always just be on us to be responsible for everything, even though nowadays the landlords are giving us plenty of TI, so you guys have more skin in the game than we do. But yeah, I think
You've got
that,
a good broker.
I got a great broker.
What do you see as far as developers putting the money, CVS, and they lease it to a restaurateur operator?
There's a lot of freestanding development in the works. It's just changing, and it's more often than not multi-tenant. So it's 3 or 4 users. It's a Starbucks combined with a Chipotle, or a MedExpress, MD Now combined with Pacific Dental or Heartland Dental. There's a lot of pretty strong 3,000 square foot, 2,000 square foot retailers right now with credit that you can do freestanding for. And sometimes when you're doing these 2-3 store buildings, they're really more secure than even a Walgreens and CVS are now, because they're easy to repurpose and they're easy to re-merchandise. Whereas if you have one 13,000 foot Walgreens, those who've gotten one back, like me, you find that it's hard to subdivide them and hard to repurpose them. So there's a lot of development, and a lot of developers are doing really well in that. I mean,
A lot of the stuff that we do in terms of that is also ground leasing. So we'll lease the 1 acre, 2 acre pad. Wawa's doing a lot of leasing like that. And it doesn't cost the landlord anything for the most part. A ground lease doesn't come with a big TI package like a multi-tenant building, because it's going to cost you all of $120 a foot to build the building, and then you're probably paying TIs on top of that, I would say, more or less. But like a Texas Roadhouse doesn't cost you anything. An Olive Garden doesn't cost you anything. These are ground leases. Taco Bells don't cost you anything. You're likely going to get less rent, but you're also decreasing your period zero by a lot. So I mean, your profits are still there. It just depends on the nature of the shopping center. And when you're looking at a shopping center from Zip, a lot of the time, like Rod does, you gotta figure out what makes the most sense. Sometimes it is the multi-tenant, but sometimes you do need that CVS because it makes perfect sense. There's a huge gap in the market, and they're willing to just pay crazy rents for it. You've got bank out parcels too. There's a lot of options.
You also have restaurants, freestanding building, such as McDonald's and Burger Kings and Miami Grills and so forth, where the cap rate selling those spaces are running between a 4.5 to a 5.5 cap to triple net investors. So there is a huge market for that, and there are thousands of these stores being sold to investors.
Great point, because I mean, Wawa and Cumberland Farms now and Racetrack have stepped into the void because CVS and Walgreens aren't doing as many deals, and they're very lucrative, and those cap rates are still going, at really low amounts.
So if McDonald's or Burger King and Miami Grill basically goes ahead, buys a lot or a piece of land from one of the developers, builds the restaurants, get it operational, they do a 8 to 10% rental cost to the tenant, to the franchisees, and then they sell that property, that triple net, to an investor with a 4 or 5% cap, and they're making a ton of money. So it is a way to refinance the process of putting new restaurants out there.
I understand you are very optimistic and I like that, but let's see the reality of it. You are concerned about all these national credit tenants shutting down stores left and right all over the country, Florida, just name it, or going bankruptcy? What is your opinion of that situation, the reality? I know you're optimistic about it, but I wanted to hear the reality.
It's a repurposing of the industry. And when you see a Sears going out of business after 126 years, you say, why? Well, they didn't adapt to the new technology. Sears used to do exactly what Amazon does. The difference is that you got it on the mail, a 2-pound, 3-pound catalog every month. And but there is no different in the model. It's just how they were not able to migrate from the paper to the electronic. People are still buying. So there is not an issue of buying. It's an issue of who's going to sell it and fulfill that need, and how you're going to fulfill it under the new technology.
The sad reality is that every retailer in the world will at one point go broke. They will cease to exist, and they will be replaced with somebody else. And that doesn't scare anyone who's a career retail person, because we've seen it our entire career. And it's part of it. You have to have some sort of evolution of retail, because if not, you're just stagnant. You don't go the customers aren't going to Macy's in their Sunday dress anymore, and that's the outing for the day. That just doesn't happen. So the reality is that retail vacancy is 4% in all of South Florida,
regardless,
something like that.
Right, regardless.
So, and that's the reality today. Nationwide, the retail landscape is different, but even then, you've got something like a 2,000 or 3,000 business net gain in 2018 so far. So you've had more businesses open than you've had closed.
The reality is 12,000 new stores open versus 8,000 closed in the last year. And the other reality is, do we really need so many mattress stores? I mean, come on. I mean, let's repurpose them with something better. And so we're going to have closures, and we're going to have that cycle, that life cycle of retail is going to happen. There are headwinds, there's no doubt. Interest rates are up, construction costs are up. But in many ways, that kind of tempers some of the development that and the amount of space coming on the market too. So, not necessarily a bad thing.
Great. I apologize. We're kind of trying to stick to the schedule. We're already a little over time, but please, people will be here to ask any questions. But thank you very much to the panel. Hope you all enjoyed it.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.